What's going down, Degens? I'm back again with more degenerate plays, as always, in the end of May, right? Just the time when football is fresh on your mind, when that's all you're thinking about, when it is completely and utterly football season, which of course it's not, and it makes me a little sad every day, but it's coming, it's getting closer. So let's hop into it. A couple of things that I want to go over today, guys. Uh, the correlation stuff, I'm still working on a coaching like spreadsheet, algorithm, all that kind of stuff, like I always do. I could give it to you guys right now, but it's just not exactly where I want it to be yet. I'm working on some fine tuning some numbers to kind of give you a better correlation and kind of nail down the time period that it's going to be accurate for. Uh, Getting back into the last video, really want to stick more to those numbers this year. It was spitting out some winners last year, and I think this year we can do even better. Not only if we follow what I put out to begin with, which makes fucking sense, but secondly, if we really drill down into when these numbers become accurate. So, like I said, I'm doing some back testing. I'm working all that stuff out. Right now, it looks like the numbers that I'm putting out are getting to be very accurate, as in like 65+% accurate after week 8. And that kind of coincides with rest advantages and disadvantages and all that kind of stuff. Basically, just more data points, right? And so that's one thing that I did want to talk about today, and I can share today, and that's going to be scheduling spots and different games that I really, really like that are further down into the season, like week 8, 9, 10, 11, blah, blah, blah. So if you're looking at the screen, you're kind of looking at a few of them already. But on top of that, these are going to be games that I personally feel like, obviously, before the season even kicks off, one team maybe has the advantage over the other just naturally. And so on top of that, we're going to add some other factors that kind of lead us into a really heavy lean and an early season pick in some of these games. Lastly, for these, I didn't want to just go with like the traditional, like, well, these guys, have 3 road games or whatever. That's still a factor. I'm still monitoring that. I still have it on the spreadsheets and everything. And of course, I'll give you guys all that information as it comes up. But for the games that I really, really feel strongly about, obviously way, way ahead of time, super, super early, I want to go over those with you today. So if you see these lines pick up or pop up between now and the time the season starts, you can jump on them now, put a couple bucks down, grab the line. One thing that I did notice is that if you go through any books that are offering these, like, way look ahead lines, like in week 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, none of the lines are over 10 points right now, which is crazy because if you've been doing this for any amount of time, that at some point throughout the season, you are going to have, like a whatever team plus 17, right? Or like the Texans plus 24 or whatever the hell it was last year. Those are not out yet. So if you can get some of these favorites right now, like -6.5, -9.5, whereas when it comes to game time, you're probably looking at like a -14, -17. Do it now, right? Obviously. Aside from those spot picks, I'm going to give you my week 1 picks right now because I have 5 that I locked in. I don't want to be wiffle waffling or whatever the hell you call it. I want to just get these 5 plays locked in, let them sit there, let them simmer, and give me enough time if I do need to either hedge out, change because of injury, whatever it may be. If the line changes, I can double down, whatever it is. It gives me enough time to move around. I have my 5 plays. I have the 5 that I really, really feel strongly about as of right now. And I don't, like I said, barring injury, I don't see any reason why I would want to get off of these. If anything, I may want to put more down as we get closer to the season. And then lastly, I do have a season-long play. I have not given many of these out on the channel really at all, though that I do tend to do pretty well on those. About 2 years ago, I went 4-0. That was the year I actually had the Rams winning the Super Bowl ahead of time. So that played out pretty well. And the last year I hit 2 or 3 playoff spots, including like the Ravens and things like that. So that did pretty well. So I am going to give these, at least the one that I have today, ahead of time. Last week or last time I talked to you guys, we talked about the Bears and maybe them having a jump up. I was hoping that I'd be able to find a better line on that. As of right now, the best you can really find on the Bears is like 9, depending on where you're shopping at. So I'm not too crazy on them where I'm willing to put that down just yet. I know there's some places that are offering like 8 right now, but it's a really high juice, and I'm just not willing to do that. So, like I said, I'll go over the one play that I do have right now, and there probably will be another 1 or 2 season long plays that pop up throughout the off season. Just the law of large numbers kind of leads us to playing more season long plays, right? Because if you, like I said, if you've been doing this for any amount of time, you know that on a week to week there's different advantages, disadvantages to travel, injuries, playing time, whatever, that are gonna pop up, and different variances, different turnovers, one score touchdowns, all that stuff. All these little variances that come up week to week, game to game, play to play, that over the course of time, right, over the law of large numbers, that should kind of even out and balance out. So that mathematical equation, I guess, kind of leads us to, hey, we should play more long term plays, right? Season long plays, so that we have enough time, or we give enough time for those variances to kind of even out. So instead of going for like, hey, let's just do like the first quarter, which can be good if there is a particular item that has you leaning that way, it is more advantageous to do these season long plays where we know, like I said, there's several things pointing us in one direction, and we have enough time to maybe one, account for any variances, and two, hedge if we need to, depending on what we see throughout the season. So, like I said, I'll get into that. First, let's go ahead and start off with these scheduling spots. Week 8, one of my favorite plays is in Week 8. The next one's in Week 9. This Week 8 one is Falcons at Titans. So the Falcons are getting a lot of hype right now, mainly because of Bijan Robinson, which I get it. The kid's good. I'm a UT fan. He's awesome. I've watched him, obviously, his years at UT. But he's really the only thing that they have to be psyched about right now. I know, obviously, they have like Drake London. Who knows how that's going to turn out with Ritter back there. Arthur Smith is okay. He's an average coach, I guess is what we would put him at. But looking into their schedule, come Week 8, they have not had their bye week yet. I believe their bye week is either Week 9 or 10. But at this particular time, they will not have had it yet. And they will have traveled 4 times in 6 weeks, including a game to London. Whereas the Titans, who are playing at home, are coming off their bye week. So I have not seen this line out there just yet. But I do expect it to be a Titans, favorite, I guess, or favorited for that week. I'm looking to try to get it at Titans -2.5, Titans -3. I would be fine as well. I do think you're going to see a better line than this, mainly because the Falcons are going to get steamed up, and the Falcons, if they have a hot start, may even kind of whittle that line away a little bit, maybe like just an even money or pick them, at that time. Either way, though, I like the Titans in this spot because, like I said, the Falcons have played in London. They're continuing to travel. They have not had a chance to rest. They are a very physical team on paper, right? They have a running quarterback. The coach wants to run. The offensive coordinator wants to run. They're going to use their big linemen. They really only have 2 receiving options, right, with Drake London and Kyle Pitts. And even that is not really great options, I guess, right? But all of that is just to say that even if you think the Falcons have an advantage on paper, right? If you think they have maybe just a little bit of a talent edge over, Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, assuming they're still the starters, the scheduling issues should put the Titans over the edge. Now, like I said, this Titans 2.5 to 3 is what I am willing to pay, and I think it should be a decent line. Again, I fully expect the Falcons to actually end up being the favorites if it is not a pick 'em by the time this game comes around, because I do think the Falcons should have at least a decent start to the season. So that's spot number 1. Spot number 2 is the very next week, and this one has a lot more factors into it. But again, still kind of a rest edge, right? So it's the Giants at the Raiders. Giants coming off a 2-game homestand. Raiders are coming off 2 straight travel spots, and the game right before this one is a Monday night football game against the Lions. Giants, obviously, in my opinion, have the better coach, have just the better overall team, especially with the Raiders having so many questions right now with Jimmy Garoppolo and his foot and just Devontae Adams. It's a whole mess. But also, the Giants, this is going to be their first of 3 consecutive road games. If you've been watching this channel for a little bit now, you already know that's one of the spots I like to pick on. The first game in a 3-game road series, the traveling team covers 56% of the time, and this is over the course of like the last 10 years at this point. So, good spot for the Giants as far as it being their first travel spot. Also a good spot for them to be coming off of something with some rest, basically, right? Because you're going to have a little bit of an additional edge there with the Raiders having to play on Monday and having to travel from Detroit back to Las Vegas late Monday night, come in Tuesday morning. Tuesday's typically the off day for the NFL anyways, so they're probably still not practicing. They're probably not really getting into full practice until Wednesday, and depending on what the coaches are doing, unless they're looking ahead, the coaches are probably not really putting in that game plan and implementing anything until Wednesday. Whereas the Giants should have started their implementation right Sunday night, Monday morning, somewhere along those lines. Also, though, the Raiders coming off of 2 straight travel spots. Yes, they're at home for this game, but it does take a toll, especially if you have not had your bye week just yet. It's going to add up. So, and the Giants are going to come in focused because they're just starting their road trip. So this game, to me, huge buy-in spot for the Giants, regardless of how their early season has gone. Giants, I'm willing to pay up to 7. I'm trying to obviously get to 6.5. But I do think that the Giants are a smash play for this week. I think this will end up being one of the biggest spots that I end up jumping in on, at least prior to the season starting. Like I said, I have not seen this line just yet. And if the Raiders get off to a slow start, which is kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen, this line could be bigger, right? It could be Giants minus 7.5 if they're trying to get you off of it, or, that's just what the line ends up being. But I really love the Giants in this play, and I'm going to find a way to get on it sooner than later. Next play here, this is going to be the Broncos at the Bills, and this is one where I'm not really completely sold on the team just yet, and that's going to be the Broncos. But the Broncos will be coming off a bye week. The Bills are going to be coming off Monday Night Football, so it's a huge rest advantage for the Broncos. Secondly, though, the Bills are playing against Cincinnati that Monday night, so this is not like a walk in the park game for the Bills. They're not playing the high school team or whatever it is, so it's going to get a lot of their focus. Probably going to be at least somewhat of an aggressive game. You're going to have the Broncos coming into town off their bye week, traveling. If you haven't already heard, the bye week it's good for rest, but a lot of times if they play at home that week after, the team doesn't perform up to par. So really what you want is a team who's had a bye week and then it's traveling. Something about them kind of getting their mind like back into business mode, right? Because you're traveling, you're leaving the family, you're kind of having to get back to work. Typically helps. So now, who knows how the Broncos are going to look, right? Like Sean Payton, hopefully, yeah, he does a good job. I think he will. Hopefully he has Russell Wilson looking a lot better. The whole team just looking a whole lot better. And I think, Sean Payton has proven to us over his time with New Orleans that he's somewhat of a slow starter. If you didn't already know this, go back and look at his time with the Saints. Does not have a great record. The first 1 to 2 weeks is, I believe, like something like 70% losses, and even like 80% not covering, basically, against the spread those first 2 weeks. So slow starter, and I think we're going to see that trend continue, especially with his first year with the new team. But he should be building, as he usually does, throughout the season, and especially by the time we get here until week 10, he should have that team looking pretty decent. So the Broncos, I'm looking to get a +3. I don't know if we're going to get it. I know the Jaguars are +3 when they play the Bills earlier in the year in London or wherever. So I'm hoping that we can get at least a similar line with the Broncos. but it is a good spot just going off of rest advantages and the Sean Payton, hopefully kind of learning curve that we should be looking at. Another one in Week 10, this is going to be the Lions and Chargers. Lions coming off a bye week, Chargers coming off of 2 straight primetime games. So they're playing Sunday night and then Monday Night Football. And they had a bye already, but their bye was way back in Week 5. This has already been 5 weeks after the fact. The Lions coming in rested. Again, we see a team getting the bye week, then traveling against a team who not only is coming off a kind of a short week, right? Like a one less day of rest, but really 2 weeks of doing that, because you have 2 primetime games. It may not seem like a huge deal, but these teams who are, used to getting as much rest as they can and kind of being on a pretty strict schedule, this can throw a team off, especially because the Chargers have a really front-loaded schedule with a lot of primetime games. I think they have something like 6 primetime games, and at least 5 of them come in the first 10 weeks. So a lot of traveling, a lot of late nights, a lot of back and forth through the country. I think that's going to catch up with the Chargers, and this is just a terrible spot for them. So give me the Lions plus 2.5 for that game, especially when you look at the Lions and just the way that they like to play. Dan Campbell is a decent coach. Like, he's a lot better than I gave him credit for when he started his time there with the Lions. He is a little run heavy for my taste, but I think that is exactly what the Chargers struggle with over the last couple of years. They have had a very hard time stopping the run, so I do see the Lions finding some success on them on just a normal circumstance, much less with a rest disadvantage. The last one I'm going to go over today is going to be the Raiders at the Dolphins, Week 11. Now, this is the Raiders playing Monday Night Football the week prior against the Jets, have not had a bye week. Dolphins coming off their bye week. Now, the Dolphins are coming off of their, I believe it's Germany or London. They had gone overseas in Week 9. Week 10 is their bye week. Week 11, they're playing at home against the Raiders. So this is, if you haven't noticed, this is the Raiders spot. It's a disadvantage to them because it's like the third time this has happened in like a 4-week time span for the Raiders. The Dolphins, like I said, having the bye week and staying at home is not always ideal, but having a bye week and having your opponent coming off of a Monday Night Football game is definitely less ideal for your opponent. So the Dolphins, just on paper, their coaching staff, their quarterback, assuming that Garoppolo is there, receivers, really everywhere except for the running back position, the Dolphins have the advantage, and I don't think that the Raiders are really going to be able to do much to keep up with this Dolphins team. I don't think their defense has what they need to slow down the Dolphins. And then lastly, I really do think the Raiders are going to be off to a rough start. They have a really tough schedule, a lot of rest disadvantage spots, some of which we've already gone over, and that could lead to this line being even bigger. This could be like a Dolphins minus 10, minus 12, minus 13 by the time we get to game time. So if you see this line pop up, this is one of those spots that I would say you do need to jump on before we get too close to the game. Now, obviously, it's the end of May, beginning of June, depending on when you're watching this. So you don't need to go, run out, try to find it today. But just as you keep checking lines and as they keep getting closer, look at a couple of these spots that I'm giving you now, especially these Raiders games, because I think that they're just going to have a bad year, and try to hop on these lines before they start getting crazy. And on that note, I also want to touch on the Raiders and their season-long win total, because right now you can find their season-long win total at 7.5 wins. Depending on where you're looking at, it's anywhere from minus 155 to minus 160. So it is juiced up. It's not the minus 200 or minus 240 that some other teams are, but it is juiced. That's still within my range of outcomes there, or my pay range basically. I'm fine with that. I'm honestly willing to take this up even to minus like 175. But at the under 7.5 wins, I just don't see it. I don't see where they're getting even 7 wins from, especially when you take into account all of the rest disadvantage that they have. They actually have one of the toughest schedules in the entire NFL. According to Warren Sharp, they actually have the second hardest schedule in the entire NFL. Only the Patriots have a tougher schedule. The Patriots, however, do not have all of the rest disadvantages that Vegas is going to have. So if we just take a look at the Vegas schedule, and I'm going to run through these real quickly just to at least kind of an eyeball how many wins we think they should have. So they play at Denver week 1. Right off the bat, it's a bad spot. You're going to go to play in Denver in elevation when your team has they're not like mid-season form yet. So you have guys who are not in peak condition, and you're going to put them in altitude and make them run and cover. And you're playing against Sean Payton, who, like I just said, is not really a great starter of seasons, but you also don't really know what he's doing with his team. So it's very difficult to game plan for that. So you just have a lot of stuff working against you. Let's say that they lose that game. I do think that game, if nothing else, is going to be a low-scoring game. And that leads to a lot of losses for this Raiders team, especially with a defense where they're not really able to kind of focus on one aspect of the team or another. But let's just chalk that up as a loss. Week 2, they're going to go to Buffalo. Again, you're traveling to Buffalo. I don't think anybody has the Raiders beating Buffalo in this spot. And like I said, a lot of this does hinge on Jimmy Garoppolo even playing for the team. As of right now, it's in question because of his foot injury. Assuming that he does, though, then you also have to wonder about Davante Adams, because it looks like he doesn't want to be on that team anymore. He's trying to get out of there. There's just not really a whole lot of players that want to be there right now, other than like Josh Jacobs. So you're going to Buffalo, you have all these questions, and even if those guys play, I don't think that they really have a legitimate shot to win that game. Best I think they could hope for is that Buffalo has an injury in week 1, right? Week 3, Pittsburgh, finally a somewhat winnable game. That's going to be a Sunday night game. Like I said, it's winnable. I don't think they're going to win that one either. I think Mike Tomlin is just a better coach. I think that those players are more cohesive, and really you have a year 2 quarterback, a year 2 receiver in Pickens, and just a lot of stuff kind of coming together for Pittsburgh, which should be a decent enough season. And I don't think Vegas is going to win that game. I could not point to one aspect of the Raiders team and say, yeah, that's how they're going to win. This is what they're going to do. Pittsburgh, they can do a little bit of everything okay. They're not going to be great at anything, but they can pass it a little bit. They can run it a little bit. They did improve their offensive line. The Raiders, like I said, who knows what we're even going to be getting with this team. And their coach is not great. We talked about this last year. Their coach on paper and his just statistics, his win rate has been terrible. His entire career, not just last year. I mean, talking about his entire career from college, NFL, everything. He's just the lower end of the totem pole as far as coaches go. He's definitely like bottom 5. So I don't give them a lot of credit that way either. And then for week 4, you're traveling the 3rd time in 4 weeks, and you're going to go play against the Chargers. Again, another high-powered team that I don't see the Raiders keeping up with any of these games, even if it is Jimmy Garoppolo playing back there. As conservative or as kind of low 80 target, average target position, whatever the damn thing is, what I'm talking about. He doesn't pass the ball very far. It's just not a very aggressive quarterback. And with that, you have a lot of issues when you play a team like Buffalo. When you play, the Chargers, it's just going to make things very difficult to stay in the game, especially to win the game. From the Chargers, then you play Green Bay. That game's finally winnable, or another winnable game, and that is one that I think they do finally win. I think they finally get the monkey off their back to end up winning against the Packers. From there, you play in New England. New England, again, winnable game. I am going to give the edge to New England just strictly based off of coaching. Give me Belichick. Give me a decent team who knows what they're doing, who at least has an identity on what they want to do against this Raiders team who we can only guess at right now. Then they're going to Chicago. That I could see as being winnable. I still can't really give them the nod, though, especially with DJ Moore going there, with Justin Fields being as athletic as he is. Eberflus is a question. But we've already talked about this in the last video. I think the Bears are primed to take a jump forward. So give me the Bears in that one, especially playing in Chicago. Then from there, we're going to travel again. We're going to go play at Detroit. So you're traveling back-to-back spots against Detroit, who, like I said, like just said, Campbell's a average to above average coach. Decent team, really good pieces. They found a way to win with, let's just call it average quarterback play, right? And be generous about it. They have younger pieces. They know what they want to do and how they want to do it. And I don't really see a way for this Raiders team to win that game. We'll call it winnable, but they're really going to have the ball bounce their way to win. I would say even 2 to 3 of these games, and that is going up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 8 weeks in, and I'm thinking they're probably 2-6 at that point. Then you're playing the Giants. There's no way they're beating my boy Dayball. It's just, like I said, they're going to have something go their way if they're winning some of these games, whether it's injury, luck, bounce of the ball, field goal, 65-yard field goals, whatever it is. And we just can't count on that. I can't bet on that. From there, then they play the Jets. And they're playing the Jets on Sunday Night Football. The Jets on paper look like world beaters, right? Especially if they get a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. And by this time, you should have a healthy Breece Hall. You should have a healthy defensive line. Everything should be kind of where it should be, right, for the Jets, hopefully, at that point. Then you're going to travel to Miami. Again, just big mismatch. You have a team that may not be super aggressive throwing the ball down the field, but who can throw the ball down the field, who has great fast receivers, high, potency offense. It's just not really a lot of answers back for the Raiders. Even with Devontae Adams and Garoppolo, those two guys just don't mix to me, because you have Devontae Adams, who's a great receiver, great at getting open. One of his biggest threats is being able to catch the ball on the sideline, just put the ball up for him. But then you have a guy like Garoppolo who wants to hit crossing routes and drag routes and slant routes. And yeah, that'll work. That's going to move the ball. But it's extremely difficult to move the ball the entire length of the field when you're going, 7 to 10 yards at a time. And then from Miami, then you go to play Kansas City. Again, I don't think anybody in their right mind has Vegas beating the Chiefs this year without Derek Carr. Though they did give it a good run a couple times with Carr, with a healthy team. I don't see it this year. Then you finally have the bye week, and then things sort of circle in their way. They play Minnesota. They have rest, right? They finally got a week off. It's obviously a little bit later in the season. I think at this point it's week 14 so week 13 is their bye. Week 14 they're playing Minnesota. Hopefully they have a rest advantage, right? Nope, of course not. Because in week 14, or week 13 I should say, Minnesota also has their bye week. So they don't even get that advantage for week 14. Week 15 you're going to play the Chargers. The Chargers are coming off a homestand against Denver. Not really a huge advantage there. And again, we see a Chargers team who's just on paper and offensively, defensively, really everywhere on that field should have the advantage against the Raiders. Then you play at Kansas City for the Christmas Day game. Again, I don't know anybody who has the Raiders even being able to contend with Kansas City. Then you have Indy, a more winnable game. Then you had in the season, I should say, with Denver, which, who knows, maybe at this point Denver doesn't have too much to play for, right? Whether one way or another, whether they've locked in a bye week. I'm sorry, not a bye week. They're not. I doubt that they beat Kansas City as far as standings, but maybe they've locked in the wild card. Maybe they're completely out of the playoffs. Maybe something's going on there where they can get a win there. Indy is a winnable game. The only issue with that one is Anthony Richardson, if he is any good, should be looking good this late in the season, right? He should be kind of turning on. You have a new coach. You have a new quarterback. those guys are probably going to start slow and start kicking it up and finally kind of clicking together towards the end of the season, right when Vegas starts to play them. So you have, again, another just like a scheduling disadvantage. If you want to play Indy, you really want to play them early in the season before those guys get kind of rolling together. So of this stretch here, I'm going to say they have maybe one win. It probably either Indy or Denver. I can't really give them a win to any of the other three teams. So that's one win over the last 5 weeks. And let's just call it 3 to 4 wins over the first 12 weeks. So even if we round up on everything, I mean, we're looking at 5 to 6 wins. Let's just be generous and say 6. Let's say somebody loses quarterback, somebody does something, and the Raiders have a chance and they get 6 wins. That's a lot. That's really me going above and beyond and stretching to get them to 6 wins. And that's, again, only briefly touching on scheduling disadvantages, and this is assuming all their players come back, Garoppolo and Devontae Adams play, and they're healthy the whole season. I can't even get them to 7. So if you can get 7.5, you definitely should take it. Like I said, minus 160 is fine. I'm not going to put my money down on this one just yet, only because we're still in NBA season. We still have this championship series to go. There's still some other things that you can put some money on down now and win within the next week or two, instead of waiting for months and months and months. But that is definitely going to be one of my season-long plays. Is going to be Raiders under 7.5 for the season. Lastly, let's talk about Week 1, and I'll try to make this one quick. But Week 1, we have Texans versus Ravens. Ravens minus 9.5. Like I said, I'll keep these quick. Ravens are just amazing to start off the season, right? John Harbaugh loves to play all his guys in the preseason, get everybody kind of up and running, get his offense in place, get everything going before the real games even start. So he usually comes in, he's ready to roll, he's ready to rock, he's beating the hell out of really shitty teams Week 1. That's just what he does. He's got an amazing win record for Week 1 season openers. And they usually blow teams out. It's like 20 plus points. I forget what the numbers are now. We've done this research year in and year out, several years now, and it's just always points the Ravens' direction. The only time that they lost in the last 5 years was because of a bunch of injuries. Week 1 also we see the Bengals and the Browns. For the Ravens minus 9.5. I'm totally fine laying the 9.5. I do think you're gonna see Ravens minus 10 by the time we get to kickoff. Bengals versus Browns. The Browns plus the 2.5. So this may be a little bit odd, but the Bengals have started off very, very slow over the last several years, 2 to 3 years. Their first 2 games, I think they're 1-5 in the last 3 years over the first Week 1 and Week 2. And the one win that they had was an overtime win. And I believe, and if I'm remembering correctly, this years ago, they won it on a field goal at the end of the game. So it's just, they don't tend to start off really quickly. I think this is coaching, again, like I was saying with Sean Payton, just coaches that are waiting to get stats or waiting to get data points, waiting to get a lot of information on their opponents, and they just don't have it Week 1 or Week 2. So we see that with some coaches, right? We see that with Sean Payton, we see that with Frank Wright, and now we're going to see that with the Bengals, and I can't remember Zach, whatever his name is now. But we just see it time and time again, and we have to prepare for that. We have to know that. And I wouldn't be surprised if you want to, fade Frank Reich in his first week with the Panthers, because it's obviously a new team for him. Bryce Young is also first-time quarterback, but that's besides the point. Give me the Browns plus 2.5. And honestly, I'm looking to tease that game. I don't have the other leg to that yet, but I'm looking to tease that and get it through the 3, get through the 6, through the 7, get it to the 8.5. The other side of that game, though, is going to be the Browns and Bengals under 47. Full disclosure, I actually got this at under 48.5 about 2-3 weeks ago at this point, when the lines first came out. Quick little nuggets on these. So the home dogs in 2022 last year were 2-7 to the under, right? So 2 games went over, 7 games went under. when we had a home dog involved, right? Year before, home dogs were 4-2, so the over actually hit 4 out of the 6 times in 2021. Now, keep in mind, that is the year that we had like the COVID restrictions or anti-restrictions, or what you want to call it, where the refs were kind of told like, hey, just don't blow the whistle, right? Like, just let them play. We know a lot of teams have not been practicing fully because of the COVID issue, and they just kind of let everybody do what they wanted. Got away with a lot of stuff, and there was a very high-scoring year, especially the first half of that year, with a lot of overs hitting. So that's somewhat expected, right? That the home dogs had the over that particular year. Before that, in 3 years prior to that, so 2020, 2019, 2018, home dogs were 12 and 32 to the under. So 12 games went over, 32 stayed under for that week 1 matchup. So 66% to the under over the last 5 years. We have 6 games that fit this criteria for this year, for 2023, right, for week 1. So we should expect 4 of them to stay under. So I'm giving you that information because I have a few that I really like, but if you don't like the ones I like, you may want to just round robin all 6 of those games with the unders, with the 4-team parlay on the round robin, and just let it lay where it does, because I can give you mathematical reasons why that should hit. Not saying that it will, but if you want to take a couple bucks, if you have a couple dollars left over after all your plays for week 1, you want to throw it in on that. That would be the best way to hit on a week 1, big parlay that may pay for the rest of your year. Aside from that, though, week 1, same kind of situation here with the Raiders and the Broncos, under 45. Now, I did talk about, obviously, the Raiders earlier and the Broncos, but in that week 1 game, the Broncos, again, in altitude, the Raiders have most likely not, and they will not be adjusted to high altitude for this week 1. They're not going to be in mid-season form. We have a week 1 Raiders team who most likely hasn't gelled by that point, because you probably haven't had a whole lot of practices with the full team, especially if Garoppolo is back there. The Broncos with a new coach, Sean Payton being a slow starter, that team in general being more adapted to like a slower paced run-based kind of team. Give me the under 45. Everything points to the under on this game. Lastly, in the last 4 years, the Broncos home opener has stayed under 31 points 4 years straight. And those four years, their home opener has come in like week 3. Not to say that it's a huge difference, right? Like, it shouldn't be, but those first 2 weeks are crucial, because that is when your players are starting to get like adapted to game speed, and that's when they're still somewhat, at least, being molded, being fit again, getting back into like mid-season form. Obviously by like week 4, 5, 6, these guys should be ready to rock. They're ready to go. They've been playing a couple weeks. Week 1 and 2, definitely not. Week 3, maybe. And so, like I said, the fact that this has happened 4 years straight now, and their openers have been in like week 3 or week 4 even sometimes, this is big. This under is going to be one of my bigger plays for week 1. 44 is a key number with the low scoring games. 41, 44, 47, and then 51. Those are your key numbers for totals. If it stays over the 44, if it's like 44 and a half even, I'm going big on this one. Aside from that, last one here's me, the Packers and the Bears. Again, under 45 for week 1. The Packers, over the last 3 years, they have averaged, actually, I'm sorry, I wrote this down wrong. It's actually under the last 4 years. They have averaged under 16 points in their season openers. And that's mainly because they had one game where they scored, I think, 40 points. Everything else has been like 10, 7, 3. They've been very, very slow. And that's all with Aaron Rodgers. And those 2 games, the last 2 games, they've been 0-2. They lost both. The 2 years prior to that, you had Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, and they had 1 year where they put up a lot of points. The year prior to that, 4 years ago, they played the Bears for like the 50th anniversary or whatever it was for the NFL, and it was like a 10-3 game. They won, but it was just, I remember watching that game vividly because I was like gonna shoot myself. Like, this game is so stupid and slow. I can't watch this. I was so pissed that was like the season opener. So this game, something about LaFleur, again, going back to coaching, we see coaches that are just not ready week one, right? Whether it's they don't have enough data points, they haven't had enough scouting on the other team, they don't know what their team is doing yet, they don't have an identity, whatever it is, they're just not really a fast-paced team to come out week one. And I don't expect them to be, especially now that they have Love back there instead of Aaron Rodgers. Again, you still don't have Devontae Adams, obviously. You don't really have a big-name receiver, right? Hopefully Christian Watson can do something. On the other end, though, we have the Bears playing with Justin Fields. Great athlete. I love him for fantasy. I think he's going to do great things. DJ Moore, I think he's going to be fine. Eberflus is just not an aggressive coach. He's not out there trying to do like a running gun offense. He's not trying to put up 40-plus points. I see a lot of running for the Bears. I see this game ending up as like a 21-10 kind of game, with a lot of just running, some short looks just to kind of move the chains to someone like a DJ Moore. And just, again, if the Bears are able to get out to a lead, like a 21-3, 21-7 kind of lead, I expect Eberflus to be more conservative, right? Take his foot off the gas, really focus on defense, and just try to limit the Packers at that point, and then milk the clock and run even more. So those are the plays that I like for week one. I have 3 unders and then the Ravens -9.5, and then the Browns +2.5. There's one other play that I really like, and that's the Giants. The Giants playing against the Cowboys. It's Giants +3. Have not officially put it on here just yet. I'm just waiting to see if the line moves either way, because it could be Giants +3.5, could be Giants +2.5, depending on what goes on. But of course, you have the Cowboys tax, and the Giants are not really getting a lot of love since the Jets are in the same city, right? And they're getting more of the headlines. But the Cowboys have gone 0-3 in the last 3 season openers with Mike McCarthy, 2 against the Bucs, 1 against the Rams, and just have not won any. This year, they have an even slower paced offense, at least on paper, now that Kellen Moore is no longer the offensive coordinator. I don't trust Mike McCarthy to ever make any good decisions, especially when it comes to bringing in a new coach, trying to install new offensive schemes or anything like that. Tony Pollard is scheduled to be the starter, but how healthy is he? How healthy is he going to be by the time we get there? Who knows? Brandon Cooks should be a good number 2 for the receiving core. But you're playing against the Giants, who also have a double revenge spot because the Cowboys beat them twice last year, or both of their regular season games. You have Dayball with the second year under his belt, Saquon again, and Darren Waller coming into this team just gives another X factor that the Cowboys could cover, maybe with Micah Parsons, but who you're going to take away from that rushing attack to cover Darren Waller, or you're going to leave him open, one of the two. So either way, I think the Giants have the advantage here, and it's Giants +3. I really, really like that. I'm going to wait until we get just a little bit closer to pull the trigger on that one. But until then, guys, that's it for today. Thank you for bearing with me. Hopefully, at least some of this was informative and helpful and all that kind of good stuff. Leave me a like. Sign up with Bovada. It is below. There are a lot of bonuses. There's going to be even more bonuses as we get closer towards the NFL season. I really appreciate it. Any support you can give me, whether it's through Bovada or just a like and sub, appreciate it. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.